Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another exciting Propagandacast with me, your host, Imperial Dane. And today we have for you a 1 vs 1 on Semois. Yes, indeed, we will be having a quick return to Semois with the nice little cafe right here, and of course this little town with the cemetery, and of course the Doomsday Prophecy. Dun dun dun. And of course Semois is noticeable with the rather sort of map divided by river, partly by hills, but sort of creating 3 sectors or compartments, sort of a home sector slash compartment, and then sort of the central one where most of the fighting usually happens. Right here in the center of the city issue or village is right where most of it in fact happens. Usually tends to be right between the shortest point between 2 towns or bases, and this of course also happens to be a bit more helpful due to all the buildings. Points are sort of spread out here on the edges with some high munitions points. Otherwise fuel is right next to the bases of the larger kinds. Of course they are rather open to harassment. In particular, Americans love to harass the Wehrmacht fuel. But let us not wait anymore. Let us go have a look at our opponents. In the northern corner we shall be looking at Heynonnynonny, awfully cheerful name, of the Americans' 1st Infantry Division, and who shall be opposing them? It shall be You're on the Road to Nowhere. Bit of a pun there, I suppose, but Wehrmacht it is. And I suppose we will be saying 352nd Grenadier Division. And let us get right down to it. Pioneers on the way. Pioneers standing about now, getting a bit of movement on while the Americans are doing something up there as well. Wehrmacht quarters up. And no great surprise there, there's nothing else they can really build after the Kampfkraft Center was made subservient to having a Wehrmacht quarters built first. American player going for the barracks, again not unusual there. The Americans can build the weapon support center first, but it's not really recommendable, and most that do usually do so, at least in early cases, either because they're sort of novices and figure, well, if I get heavy machine guns I'll win, or they're going for the 4 engineer sniper start, using these sort of engineers to gain a lot of territory, and then sort of using the snipers to just be a pain in the ass. Pioneers saying to either side. Wehrmacht quarters up. Looks like Mr. You're on the Road to Nowhere centered both Pioneers on the getting the Wehrmacht quarters up, but now he's doing absolutely nothing with the Wehrmacht quarters. Nowhere to win. There we go. Finally getting some Volksgrenadieren. Although in this case I suppose they could be Osttruppen or any sort of Luftwaffe security troops or regular security troops, and well, other fun bits, or even replacement troops of the 352nd Grenadier Divisions Ersatzabteilung, which basically means replacement battalion. Was a bit of a unique concept to the German army. Was sort of a last stop for any sort of replacements to the division before they sort of came into the battalions proper and sort of were gotten up to speed by the veterans and given us a few tips and pointers. Laying down barbed wire here, this is the usual thing Wehrmacht players in fact do. Other players can of course also do so, but Wehrmacht players often do so to sort of protect their fuel point, at least partially, against rifleman harassment. Engineers though can of course cut through it, but at least you usually won't be seeing riflemen, although some players might go and send in some riflemen as well, sort of support the engineers, which of course makes things a lot more difficult. Volksgrenadiers heading straight for the center, straight for the cemetery. Rather interesting move there, while the rest of the American force is heading northwards through there. Quite interesting. And an MG42 is ready. Pioneers heading towards the center while the others are still busy laying down all that nasty barbed wire. Volksgrenadiers are themselves laying down barbed wire, and of course in this case it is to basically deny the opponent any cover, and of course in this case of course ensure the Americans can't run straight up to the Volksgrenadiers, thus giving the Volksgrenadiers a bit of an advantage. Of course, question is, will they be fast enough, or will the riflemen be there before all the wire is down? So 2 rifleman teams on the field so far. An MG42, Pioneers running straight northwards, right into the waiting arms of the riflemen, opening up with the M1 Garands and the M1 Carbine. Pioneers might want to retreat, and Volksgrenadiers are apparently pulling straight back into a defensive position right there. MG42 in the church, nothing unusual there. More Volksgrenadiers on the way. Engineers in the south, riflemen sort of mucking about, not entirely sure what they were, perhaps expecting a raid on this strategic point. Heynonnynonny was disappointed by the lack of fortitude by the Volksgrenadiers, who are now laying down some barbed wire here, of course, to make this even a stronger position, but no, riflemen, being the dastardly buggers they are, put a stop to that, forcing the Volksgrenadiers quickly into retreat. More riflemen have arrived. Further Volksgrenadiers are also heading in towards the center. So far nothing highly unusual. Very, very light on engagements. Question is, of course, what will the American commander do? What will the Wehrmacht commander do? Currently, of course, the American can't go for more riflemen, go for some BARs, which might also usually mean a lot of engineers with flamethrowers. And looks like he's going through here in the rear, of course, going for a nice round. Of course, riflemen do have some nasty advantages right on that field. MG40 and Volkswagen is doing the best against the riflemen in the cafe. Volkswagen is sort of trying to shift about so they aren't quite as exposed to the riflemen. Good move there. Always try to sort of minimize the fire you can get from a building if your opponent's hiding in there. Rifleman goes down, MG42 keeping firing away. Rifleman sort of sneaking him out, ensuring that Volkswagen can't leave here. Why is that? Because then the rear will be attacked, and the strategic point here might be cut off. That might end up badly. Pioneers though breaking through in the south. Of course, another method for the American might of course be to go either for a weapon support center or a motor pool. Quite a few choices there for the Wehrmacht commander. The question is, of course, what to do, and rather what he feels, if he wants to be aggressive or he wants to wait and see what the American commander do, because if he guesses incorrectly, he might end up in problem. I mean, if he goes straight for the pack expecting armor, and of course the opponent is really going heavily on infantry, he might suddenly find himself in a lot of trouble. Vice versa, if he's expecting BARs, and there we go, they are in fact BARs, rather the most usual American choice. Can get a bit boring. Pioneers cut down, but the Americans are thrust away in the north. In the center, they're still hanging about, but looks like another prong might be go through here in the south. MG42 number 2 is up. This is, of course, also a sort of usual for Wehrmacht store. 2 Volksgrenadiers, 2 MG42s. Can certainly help against riflemen with BAR, since the numerous MG42s will be stronger in locking down any sort of American assaults, ensuring any flanks will be that much harder to pull off. Not much else going on for the moment, very quiet. Pioneers sort of doing nothing. But more Volksgrenadiers have arrived, giving him 3 Volksgrenadiers and 2 MG42s, not the other way around. And of course, good show here, the cafe does have a blind spot right there. And of course, ensuring that his Volksgrenadiers there is not a bad choice. Of course, you can also place your MG42 there, and that's what I prefer actually, because then I can sort of wire this off here and then immediately and also wire off one method of assault on this point. Of course, wire up there is also good. Now riflemen are pushing through here, and flamethrower engineers. MG42 inside the church could get burned alive. No salvation from God. MG42 number 2 setting up to sort of cover the flanks. And the MG42 probably hoping to turn down on the flamethrower engineers, getting burnt. Wait a minute, apparently God is protecting. And there we go. MG42 turns guns down the engineers. Only 2 alive. No alive, 1 alive. In fact, riflemen also taking quite a beating. The MG42 fusillade being too much. Looks like the riflemen here also slowly considering to pull out. No, that's fresh ones. Engineers sort of hanging about with more flamethrowers. Riflemen pushing through in the north. How many riflemen will that be? Quite a few at least. It certainly looks like you're on the road to nowhere. Has managed to secure things in the center for now. Volkswagen is pushing onwards, although they might of course run into these riflemen with a BARs and still prove to be quite a nuisance. Riflemen pushing on in the north, and of course the choice here from you're on the road to nowhere to sort of go for 3 Volkswagen and 2 MG42s certainly turned out to be the right one, considering all of these engineers and riflemen with BARs. More riflemen are getting ready, and apparently more are getting sent out to the field. That would indicate about 5 rifleman teams. That's certainly an awful lot of riflemen, and certainly an awful lot of BARs. That's in fact 10 BARs, and that's quite lethal. Medic bunker up here, rather probably poignantly observing he's probably going to be needing something to keep him going in the longer run, since he's probably going to be suffering quite a bit of attrition. Those riflemen pushing onwards with a BAS. 1 Volksgrenadier goes down in the north. Rest are coming under heavy fire, pulling outwards, screaming at you on the road to nowhere to get them out of there, and he's trying to. BAR gets in fire, gets another Volksgrenadier holding himself to the stomach and screaming in agony as the riflemen push onwards like the heartless devils they are. Volksgrenadiers feebly resisting, but they can't really do much, down to only 3 men. Medics advancing, hoping to pull in the wounded, save them. The rest of the Volksgrenadiers taking absolutely heavy fire and are forced to retreat. And now the medics are rather on their own. Will the riflemen gun them down? Wounded being pulled in, riflemen getting ready for something. Looks like we might be seeing a rather numerous pronged assault. since large forces of riflemen are preparing here, and some engineers with flamethrowers there. That's going to be quite a bit of firepower being concentrated. Krieg barracks going up for the Wehrmacht. Volksgrenadiers getting scorched. And certainly looks like that Mr. Heynonnynonny does have the advantage, although I might recommend a sort of medic station when he has 5 rifleman teams to sort of keep things going. Supply are going up, and of course he might be going in for a minute. Then again, just with 5 rifleman teams, though, he's also going to be suffering quite a bit in terms of manpower upkeep, and in this case that's probably also going to be helpful. Medics pulling in the wounded, quite unmolested it seems. Volksgrenadiers reinforcing, and Grenadiers getting ready from the Krieg barracks. Supply are not quite ready, and looks like something's going on here. Volksgrenadiers, oh dear, taking quite heavy losses, getting gunned down. Riflemen with BAR still appearing to be quite the threat, and they should always be considered that. Riflemen here by the cafe. Not entirely sure what their intention is, but looks like something's going on here. The Americans are pushing through in the north most severely. Pioneers advancing with what? I have no idea, but Grenadiers and Volksgrenadiers now joining in. The front some slightly more veteran troops of the 352nd. The 352nd being a quite tough division, despite not really having seen any real combat except the veteran cadres, of course, which were from the Eastern Front, and rather had trained the division which was put together in Normandy in 1943. Panzers being equipped for the Grenadiers, probably expecting some armor, and there we go. A motor pool is coming up, although a pack might also be of help. Volksgrenadiers getting reinforced. 2 wounded more, and a Grenadier team will be ready. Lots of barbed wire. Good show there, and sort of hindering the enemy's movement. Grenadiers advancing without support though, and right into the Hornet's nest where most of the riflemen with the BARs are. This could end up badly for the Grenadiers. Panzerschreck ready. Riflemen here still hanging about. Layabouts. Yes, sir. Not entirely sure what else going on. Mines being laid down there. Volksgrenadiers not really to be seen, although some are being equipped with MP40s. And looks like they will be engaging the riflemen right out in the open, taking quite a bit of fire from the riflemen. Not quite the advantageous situation for the Volksgrenadiers. Their weapons are best at close range. The riflemen will be able to outgun them, and they won't even be able to get close, although they're trying to go through cover. But no, it isn't working. The riflemen are tearing the Volksgrenadiers apart. But there we go, a few kills. Veterans won for the riflemen though, and the Volksgrenadiers make a very hasty retreat. Only 1 wounded to get that Grenadier team back in action. All quiet right now. Let us go have a look at Heynonnynonny. M8 ready, armored skirts, and 50 caliber machine gun. Quite a bit of resources here, quite a bit of initiative. He can basically strike wherever he wants. Question if he gives Mr. on the road to nowhere too much time to react. And there we go, advancing on the Grenadiers. Panzerschreck flies through the air, hits a bush. Not quite a bit of luck there, and the Grenadiers are retreating. Things could easily end up very, very direly. Looks like the assault might be pushed. There we go. M8 supported by infantry and engineers, and in the north infantry and some other engineers might be getting ready. Charging in. Mines are ready. Pioneer goes down. Oh dear. Looks like 1 single Volksgrenadier made it back. Apparently a lot of Volksgrenadiers have been taking quite a beating down there in the south by that single rifleman team. And taking up position in the church, forcing away the MG42, at least forcing it to pull back to a slightly safer position. Grenadiers advancing once more for the fatherland. And the M8 advancing as well. Mortar opening up for at somewhere. Grenadiers moving in, ready to force away the Greyhound. And the MP40 Volksgrenadier is also charging in. Mortar from the Wehrmacht is rather exposed at the moment. Oh dear. Riflemen could do something very nasty to it. Mortar rounds flying through the air, suppressing them, killing 1. Meanwhile in the north, a bit of fire going on there. Flamethrowers have decided to hide inside the church. And the Volksgrenadiers move onwards. I think he might not have been aware what's going on here. He was trying to make an assault, put down some smoke, but no, his mortar has been knocked out. Quite unfortunate. Riflemen getting suppressed, killed, murdered, massacred, slaughtered. Now the MP40 equipped Volksgrenadiers are moving in to finish the job. and avenge their fallen comrades in the name of the fatherland. Americans getting ready for another pronged assault again. Only one rifleman makes it out of there. Only one Grenadier is left there. The rifleman might in fact make it out of there. MG42 hiding inside the medic bunker. Other MG42 finding way desperately from this defensive position. Mortar recruit. Rifleman team was cut down, leaving behind only a BAR as a memento. Of course, that might turn out to be a very nice weapon for the Wehrmacht. Mines hit, and the M8 is quite damaged all of a sudden. Another M8 gets ready, and he's floating quite a bit of manpower though. Panzer flies, MG42 knocked out. Grenadiers advancing, hoping to pick up the BAR. And looks like the PaK-38 is ready. Although the medic bunker is blocking for its line of sight. The Grenadiers are moving in. Tank traps there to sort of prevent any movement through there by at least vehicles. Good move. And now Grenadiers pushing through in the south. Others have remanned the mortar, and they're probably opening up there. Quite a bit of munitions now being directed against the church. The House of God no longer has a roof, or at least is quite lacking in the roof department. Engineers with flamethrowers down. Oh, the replacement engineers are quite quickly on the field, and these riflemen need to get out there before they're lost. Down to one man, only one rifleman. Grenadiers are moving in. Moving in for the kill against those Stastler Yankees. And of course, question is, will the Wehrmacht commander go for something a bit heavier? Perhaps the Sturmarmory by now, he might be able to push it. And then again, what about the American? He's floating quite a bit of resources. He could certainly have invested that in perhaps in his weapon sportsman of his own, get him some own support weapons. Or he could have perhaps gone for tank, but sadly he seems to have been forgotten and now sort of stuck about with the M8s and the riflemen with BARs. And that might actually prove to be a disadvantage. Of course, saving resources should only be done for something specific. You shouldn't be just floating about resources, because then the only thing you're doing is basically harming your own force on the field, because then your opponent will probably just bring more on, and you'll say, well, I'm saving resources. Well, you're also losing resources because you don't have enough troops to cover your own troops. And keep back the enemy. I mean, keep things in mind, keep the rate of attrition in mind, and of course be sure that the more troops you have, the more likely you're going to also keep things a bit lower on your side, rather than if your opponent outnumbers you by quite a margin. Mortar opening up. MG42 opening up on the rifleman, keeping things very nasty for them. Another rifleman team. Oh dear, looks like another rifleman team might be lost. Although looks like he's gotten another replacement team, my goodness. Now the rest are taking heavy losses. Another BAR secured by the Wehrmacht. The Grenadiers quite happy with those Yankee LMGs, and of course the LMG42 is not much of use. And apparently some riflemen have been hiding inside this building for quite some time. It really seems that Heynonnynonny does have a bit of a nasty tendency for getting his units here and there. Of course, we plan of a defensive plan. Panzers flying, but they might not actually make it against the Greyhound. The Greyhound knocks out another Grenadier. Medics pulling in the wounded. Hiccups.
Enemy unit down.
And sticky bombs being prepared. And oh dear, Grenadier team cut down. PaK-38 setting up, opening up. Hits the M8. Oh dear. Panzerfaust. Oh. Bother. Not quite working for me now. Volkswagen is holding in the line, getting suppressed by the M8. And a Panzerfaust finally knocks out the Hellhound. While now he is in fact going for a tank depot. At the same time, we're actually seeing You're on the Road to Nowhere going for the Sturmarmory. Apparently the 352nd and the 1st Infantry Division will be having a bit of an armor clash. Medics moving in, picking up the wounded. M8 firing, taking fire from a PaK. Might be the second M8 to go up in the smoke, although then again might also be the end for these Volkswagens. But no, they make it down there with that American beat. No, they didn't. Volkswagens and BAR are lost. Being behind only the Grenadiers. M8 having snuck in behind, but no. The PaK-38 is exposed to American riflemen who are charging ahead. This could really end up badly for You're on the Road to Nowhere. Why on earth do they do that? Pioneers advancing, some with an MG42, ready to cover the PaK-38. M8 forcing quite a bit of the Wehrmacht forces away, and apparently Mr. You're on the Road to Nowhere is in fact lacking quite a bit in infantry. No. Most of it seems to have moved here towards the east. Some MP40s and Grenadiers with BARs. Riflemen outside. Do they have grenades? Otherwise, they might end up in a very bad situation compared to the Grenadiers who continue far away. Interestingly enough, we're not actually seeing any veterancy for Mr. You're on the Road to Nowhere. Not a single Kampfkraft center, but instead we are seeing the Sturmarmory up, flashing away, indicating something nasty is coming in the way of the Americans. M8 ready, riflemen still hanging out. I wonder what they found in that side that house. Perhaps a secret stash of very expensive wines. And they're basically drinking away. Mortars advancing, and looks like we have a Stug 4 Sturmgeschützsphere ready. And the 352nd Grenadier Division's Panzerjägerabteilung had, besides its usual complement of tanks, had for its mobile tank hunters was actually equipped with Stug 4s, which was rather interesting since they weren't really supposed to be equipped like that. They were actually meant to be equipped with Marder 3s. Funny thing is, the 17th SS, which fought rather nearby as well, was supposed to have Panzerjäger 4s instead of Marder 3s, but they got Marder 3s.
Casualties being reported.
All that fun stuff, and the Stugs would probably been a more replacement for that, and of course might have meant the 17th SS would have much more assault guns in its favor.
We are losing a victory point.
Not a lot of divisions in Normandy had the Jagdpanzer 4, the Panzerlehr had the 12th SS, and the 9th Panzer Division were the only divisions really to hand, although some might have gone later on. Pack 38 covering the north, where the M8 Greyhound still stalks the fields. Now the Hellcat moves in as well. Quite a menagerie of American beasts from hell. Well, now looks like a small Stug unit is moving out, or it looks like it's blocking up the road. And a Kampfkraft center going up. Volksgrenadier is holding back the riflemen from the nice position of cover. MP40s blazing away, making things a lot much harder for the riflemen to move in. We're also seeing a medic pack having been equipped. That means the Volksgrenadiers are flashing up. That's why they have a medic pack firing away. And let us go have a look at You're on the Road to Nowhere, and let us briefly pause. It's time for the mid-game analysis. What is currently the situation? Well, currently the Wehrmacht commander has managed to push things away after having round been stuck in a very nasty position. He did so through tenaciousness, stoicness, I suppose, and just good gentlemanship. Of course, it did help that the American commander was floating about quite a bit of resources, thus rather making things easier for his Wehrmacht opponent, and he was rather late in getting something heavy. And though he has now finally gotten for the tank depot, Mendoza, I'm not sure, he did then proceeded to go for the M18 Hellcat, of course, knowing that we are actually seeing Stugs. That might actually work out well, of course, otherwise could actually have ended up badly. That was a bit of a gamble right there. Stugs moving out, very cinematic scene right there. And of course he's been suffering quite a bit. I mean, no medic stations either, which is a bit odd again, considering he had all those riflemen and all those engineers. A medic station would have been brilliant. Of course, for You're on the Road to Nowhere, he's finally turning things around, although he has to be careful. I mean, if he loses those Stugs, things could easily turn against him again. I mean, he doesn't really have a lot of infantry, although some is getting replaced, but still, it's happening at a bit of a slow pace. Although I suspect he might have a nasty plan with those Stugs, since he has a Kampfkraft set up at the same time, so of course we might be seeing some veterancy. And he looks like he's gone defensive. Interesting. And looks like the Volksgrenadiers here might be losing the fight to the riflemen, but Grenadiers move in to avenge the fallen Volksgrenadiers and put a stop to those silly riflemen, showing them who's the proper Soldaten. These riflemen are not looking too good. Oh dear, no! The Grenadiers are forced to retreat. The Hellcat moves in, opens up with its 50 caliber machine gun, and that 50 caliber machine gun should not be underestimated. As you might notice, it was actually able to cut down a few Grenadiers. Granted, it doesn't mean you should be using your M18 Hellcat as a tank. Some people seem to think that tank destroyer means it's a tank, but no. But it does mean you can use it a bit for infantry support if you're careful. Stug moving in for the kill at the Greyhound. Grenadiers firing away as well. Greyhound not looking too happy, but with veterans you want, it does move faster, but will it be enough? No, the Stug manages a kill, thus granting the Stug Abteilung, or Panzerjägerabteilung as it technically was, of the 352nd bit of a boost. And there we go, some more veterancy. First veterancy bit for the assault guns and generally any German Panzer gives them a 25% damage reduction. That's pretty nice. It also applies to German vehicles if you go for vehicle veterancy. That means, of course, Pumas or say half-tracks will take 25% less damage. That can also help. In particular, half-tracks do benefit from it, so they aren't so easily knocked out by sticky bombs, which is rather what Americans love to deposit on them. Phew, that was quite a bit. Riflemen heading northwards in the south, or outwards in the north. Oh, bother. But Grenadiers are moving, and looks like we have an observation post on the fuel point. Rather interesting. Of course, means the American is rather keen on the fuel, and of course some perhaps some armor or some supply and upgrades, and one is up. And these Grenadiers might want to get out of there. Too many riflemen with BARs. Retreat! Yes, there we go. While Pioneers with the support of some Volksgrenadiers are marching out southwards, and Veteran C2 for the assault guns are ready, but apparently it looks like you're on the road to nowhere has absolutely lost all hope, all interest. He really ought to be more active, I think, at least, and perhaps use those assault guns a bit more well assaulty, rather than just sort of hanging about, not really managing much. All seems to be a bit quiet for the moment, actually. Although it looks like the Americans are making an assault in the north, while in the south, the Volksgrenadiers and Pioneers are running into a bit of a problem. Tank destroyer, riflemen, all the firepower that can be mustered, and the German forces are taking quite a bit of losses. 50 caliber firing away, so it's the main gun, and oh dear, heavy losses. Pioneer team and Volksgrenadier team lost for all time. Assault guns moving in against the riflemen, light machine guns firing, and the light machine guns, or well, the light machine guns on the assault guns, that includes Dukes, Stu-42s, and the Geschützwagens are actually pretty effective. Otherwise, any German tank with a light machine gun on top are basically not really going to do much. A bit of a sad thing, but there you go. Pioneers and Grenadiers getting reinforced while others getting ready to march out. Stuks not really doing much. Veteran C2 for the infantry, now getting some Veteran C4's infantry, not a bad idea. And looks like Rangers are there to lead the way, of course, meaning that our American friend has gone for the infantry doctrine. Mortar rounds flying through the air, and looks like the Stuks are now on the move. Riflemen coming under fire, one goes down to the main gun. While Grenadiers are moving northwards to intercept the riflemen there, rather nasty. Other Stuk is watching the northern road. So far looks like the Wehrmacht commander is turning the tide around. Riflemen not doing too well. And interestingly enough, absolutely no mines from the American commander. That could really have helped him, I feel. But apparently that was not to be, and now these riflemen might suddenly force retreat. There we go. Quite a bit of firepower from the assault guns being directed against them before the assault guns turn towards the next bit to deal with. Looks like another Hellcat is being prepared. And some riflemen getting reinforced and getting ready. Looks like some clash is going to be underway soon. All quiet. All very quiet. A bit too quiet. And of course you have the sort of banter between the units. Or just sort of casual. In this case, so Herman, what did you say about those mines? Or something like that. And all quiet, going for the strategic point here. Of course, not a bad feature right there. And there's some strategic points which can, of course, mean a bit in terms of controlling resources. Riflemen advancing from the north. Or El Norte. And looks like these Pioneers might feel on the bad end of those BARs. There we go. And retreating. Americans sneaking in through the north. Getting ready for something. Rangers as well. How shall this ever end? Pioneers getting ready. Our Nebelwerfer getting prepared as well. What shall those dastardly Americans be up to? Riflemen facing off against these Grenadiers, and the Grenadiers doing apparently a sterling job in keeping those Yankees away. Grenadiers in the south, not so many in the north, only 2 assault guns. That's actually something you have to be careful about, since those assault guns could easily find themselves swarmed by all of this infantry, particularly since they do have possibly have sticky bombs. Yes, they do. Plus there's those bazookas and that Hellcat. Grenadiers coming under quite a bit of fire. Assault guns moving in for the kill. Mortar rounds firing in as well. Ranger bazookas flying through the air. So far doing absolutely no damage to the assault guns. Apparently 2 Ranger teams are on the field. Hellcat moving in. Will they actually be trying to flank about? And the Nebelwerfer opens up. Rangers clearing out the Pioneers right there. And the Pioneers were lost. Riflemen getting suppressed. And this area getting heavily bombarded, rockets and fire everywhere. Riflemen taking quite a beating. Not too happy about it, while the mortar continues to bombard the north. 17 killed so far, quite a statistic. It rather seems that You're on the Road to Nowhere seems a bit too passive for my liking, but then again that's me. Assault guns moving elsewhere now, actually, while the Americans are taking the northern point. Though of course there's the mortar, but which is currently actually unguarded. Seems like Heynonnynonny has lost his Heynonnynonny motivation and initiative. Assault guns moving in against the Hellcat. First shot deflecting and the Hellcat takes a hit. Its armor wasn't really that thick. In fact, the armor was so thick that an anti-aircraft gun, and we are not talking the Flak 88, could actually have dealt with it pretty quickly. And looks like another shot, and that, yes indeed, the Hellcat is lost to the assault guns. Grenadiers counter-attacking in the north against the Ranger support from the mortar. Pack 38 also moving in. Artillery being directed against somewhere. Right here, but nothing is really hit. And LMG-42 also being prepared apparently here. Shall we see how it goes? Not much. The mortar seems to be doing most of the job. Firing away, and the Rangers are, well, tickled, I suppose. And there we go, absolutely annihilated. And another Grenadier team has been reformed, veterancy free for the infantry. Hellcat knocks out a Grenadier with a direct shot. And seems to be that the American commander is not really coordinating his forces. Apparently 4 barracks has gone up in the church, which has taken quite a beating from now. But now Riflemen moving in, artillery going straight in at the church square. Grenades flung, Grenadiers charging, Riflemen dying. Plumes of smoke being kicked up, Riflemen retreating, Rangers suppressed. My goodness. And looks like Mr. Heynonnynonny has lost all coordination, all sense of what to do. And things are generally just going to hell now as he's throwing his troops piecemeal at, well, whatever he thinks he can get away with. On the other hand, You're on the Road to Nowhere seems to be really getting a stronger grasp on it. Another bunker going down. Good choice in the mortar, by the way. Stuke's advancing, coming under fire. Actually taking quite a bit of damage from the Hellcat, but will he be moving in? And why didn't actually cloak that? Would actually been a nice move right there from the beginning, at least. Would have given a bonus, in fact. And the Stuke advances actually, but no more Rangers moving in, flanking. Not really doing much damage except the Hellcat. Grenadiers in the north doing their best to hold away the Riflemen, while the Stukes are proving to be quite the nemesis for the Rangers. Suppressing them and killing them ever so nastily, but now the Hellcat is moving in for the kill. And looks like artillery being called in. And Pioneer is lost. Stuke, oh dear, Pioneer completely lost. Stukes are quite damaged. Naval rifle probably being fired. Oh dear, the Hellcat advanced too far and got knocked out. You have to be careful about moving into your own rate. Artillery. That's usually a good idea. And 7 command points. Apparently You're on the Road to Nowhere seems to be taking it rather relaxed at this stage. And Rangers getting absolutely slaughtered, squashed by the Panzer rockets, although some Grenadiers are not doing too well either. Riflemen doing their best, no grenades though. Hiding in the ditches, firing on the Grenadiers. Grenadiers pulling ever so cautiously back, securing the north and almost close to securing the east, and finally getting victory points in their direction again. Although You're on the Road to Nowhere is rather low at the moment, so of course you can't hope for that much longer if he loses again. Let's go have a look at Heynonnynonny. Grenadier suppressed, dying, oh dear, and there we go, retreating them, but will it? No, it will not be in time, and a Panzer is left behind, quite unfortunate. A bazooka has also been left behind, although that's not quite a Panzer. False Grenadiers have apparently been trained, that's unusual at this stage of the game. But they do send the Riflemen scurrying, firing away.
We have 300 points left.
Assault guns getting repaired. Repair bunker up right there. And apparently the Americans have not really managed to do much against this mortar, which is now up to 20 kills.
We have territory cut off from
Quite the nasty little mortar. Volksgrenadiers holding up against the riflemen. Veterans free. These are quite some tough Volksgrenadiers, tougher than your usual Volksgrenadiers. These are elite Volksgrenadiers. The sort of Volksgrenadiers who eat riflemen for breakfast. And then proceed to beat up Rangers for their lunch money. And engaging these riflemen now, that's quite a bit of Volksgrenadiers. Rangers are now in fact moving in. Riflemen are dying, and mortar rounds now flying through there. The mortaring decide to move in there, and now the Volksgrenadiers are charging across open ground. And the Rangers, no submachine guns. He's got quite a bit of munitions, but he's not really using it effectively. That's a bit unfortunate. Mortar rounds killing a few Rangers. Volksgrenadiers charging ahead. More Rangers charging in. Still no assault. I mean, submachine guns. Why on earth he's not doing that? A BAR picked up. Apparently that was not a bazooka. Volksgrenadier going down, but they are still strong. They are still tough. They are still heroes of the fatherland. And now holding the line here. Mortar rounds probably going to be flying in support of them, which is always good. But really not good management of munitions at all. I mean, he really could have used it partly for more aggressive artillery, but also just for upgrades for his Rangers. I mean, Rangers with submachine guns are quite lethal buggers. They can be a force to be reckoned with. Mortar rounds flying through the air again, while the assault guns are keeping the Rangers right there at bay with the support of some Grenadiers. Heavy losses for the Americans, wounded, dying everywhere. And forced on the run by some Volksgrenadiers and a mortar. And these Rangers are not too happy either, also forced to make a rather hasty retreat.
orders.
And now some artillery is going in the North Iwania.
Supply lines are broken.
And not quite hitting anything except the wooden fence. Again misses. There we go, killing 3 Grenadiers outright. And did the other Grenadier survive for now? Quite the fortunate Grenadier there. False Grenadiers, and now Grenadiers as well, taking on these riflemen and again charging right up in a clump when there's mortar fire on them. That's not really learning your lesson at all. Now just taking heavy losses, and Heynonnynonny has gone hey bye-bye. So there you go. And what can we learn from this rather intriguing fight? What did we learn? Well, of course, we learned that it's great with riflemen and BARs. It can certainly be very hard to deal with, and we saw that Mr. Road to Nowhere was quite penned in. He had rather difficult time actually dealing with it, but then sort of the American commander didn't really follow up on his lead. He had the advantage, but he didn't exploit it. He sort of stood around and figured, well, what do I do with all these nice resources? He didn't get really anything else. That was his main problem. Plus, he didn't really prepare himself for the long fight. Again, no medic stations, really bad. And then sort of when he finally got around to it again, he sort of then proceeded to throw away his troops piecemeal or straight into mortar fire. On the other hand, you're on the road to nowhere. Certainly could have been a bit more aggressive. Perhaps could have done with a half track or perhaps something else to sort of keep up the drive. Perhaps laid down some more mines. But then again, good uses of barbed wire and bunkers. Very nice. And also nice uses of the barbed wire here. And of course, great job with the mortar. Very good. 31 kills. Absolutely amazing. But again, when you have assault guns, you know, assault. Don't just sort of hang back and enjoy beers. But there you go. I hope you enjoyed this fight. If you did, want to subscribe or tell your friends. And if you didn't, well, why not send in a replay of your own? This is Imperial Dane saying cheers.